I'm running late. Did you have a good week? Oh, yeah. I know from a FaceTime session, there's a new animal running around, cute as a button. I don't see as many red heelers. My buddy of mine used to have a bunch of the blue ones. They're small.
And so is homesick. You got what Will has.
Oh,
What Will has.
had.
Will's here.
Well, that's what siblings do. We share. All right, if you want to open to Genesis chapter 11, round about verse 27-ish, Genesis 11:27. Back up a little bit. Let me finish my butterscotch. Enjoy this moment. Oh, where'd y'all see them at?
We went for cousins dinner over in Star.
Oh, okay. Yep. Good folks. Good folks. So is your husband for sweetening me up with my butterscotch. I appreciate you, sir. Keeping me sweet. That's a big deal. I'm trying to be. I need y'all to pray for my in-laws. They went gallivanting. I don't know. How do you like as the child or the in-law, the younger son-in-law? How do you get on to your in-laws if they're out too late gallivanting and partying, carrying on? Class reunion. What do you do? What do you do?
Figure it out. Let me know.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, you don't. What year is this, Jeeps?
64.
64th class reunion over in Gainesville. And so there was some shenanigans going on over there in Gainesville. And y'all, my father-in-law is a legend. Like, I have a whole new respect for him, and I can say it because grandma's in the classroom over there. He took a photo with him and 4 women in it, and it's him and his 4 prom dates from high school with his wife and their husbands there. That man is a legend. Legend. Woo! That is great stuff. And I got the photo to prove it. You are the man, G-Paul. If I ever doubted, I know better. But that's good stuff. That is really good stuff. Back when the world was a little smaller. Gainesville was a little different.
Yeah.
You reckon? A little bit different than what it was. All right, what do we need to make mention of this morning? We got Stella home, not feeling good. John Henry and Carmen, I believe, are in the mountains. So be mindful of them while they're traveling. I think he said their daughter, Claire, their boys are not feeling well, so that's why they won't be here this morning.
William was promoted to captain.
All right. Well, man, when one's honored, we're all honored. So good for him. Is he still in Washington area, or is he's bouncing all over? We don't know where he is.
Back.
Okay. All right. Don't forget Miss Pat. We've been mindful of her. I talked to Joe a little bit via text the other day or yesterday. Let me see, pull that up. Just some good days, some bad days and those of you that have done through hip replacement, I can't even imagine how intense of a recovery that is. I imagine it feels like everything's connected to that. She's doing good. That's what he said. The soreness and some, feeling good, really good, and then like we had some bouts of nausea.
She's doing fantastic.
Which what?
2 days after surgery.
I was about to say. That's right. So he's still in the. I love that when he texted me about her getting out, whatever. And I said, "Is it okay if I share it?" He goes, "Oh no, it's praise the Lord time. So you can share it all you want." I love that. Want to be mindful of her though. And on that note, there is a sign up on the back bulletin board. I think we're trying to coordinate meals for them for a little while. Alicia, any update or that's?
I just heard, Monday's blank, but we don't need somebody for Monday right now, because they've got
Plenty.
Yeah, so whatever's open after that might be.
So don't fill in Monday, everything after that. And then on a similar feeding note, while I'm thinking of it, looking at you, a week from today is Covered Dish at the Women's Center. So a week from today, Sunday, get your feed bags on and whatever cookies you bring. If y'all, no. Oh, well, I tell you what, if y'all want to, in Kevin's honor, make cookies and I will eat them for him. Now, Now,
He's on that Karen diet.
so how the world changes. Like now, this is a product of too many leftover Christmas cookies that now we're the celery and carrot diet. Huh? It's our fault. Well, that's what happened.
She can't say that. We know she's a good girl.
Anybody else we need to make mention of before we get rolling? Oscar?
We need to remember that Tyson Hicks, he passed away this week.
Tyson Hicks. Okay. All right. In that family. Spencer, while I'm thinking of you, I'm looking at you back there. We were riding to Tallahassee yesterday, and I had, Brooke in the car with the rest of the family, and I was playing the song Dinosaur, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, I know that song. Spencer was trying to teach me like good music one time, whatever." And I said, "I just want to thank you for introducing my daughter to quality." Like, I would have thought that song would have never like flown in the vehicle, but thanks to your positive influence on my child, we got to listen to Dinosaur by Hank Williams. Brought to you by Willie's Roadhouse on your satellite FM radio. If you ever ride with Billy Wiles in his truck, you're going to get a solid dose of Willie's Roadhouse. I think that's the only channel that plays in that truck, I'm pretty sure. And Chrissy would be here to testify if such is the case. All right. Anything else before we get rolling this morning? Nothing? Mr. Phil, would you mind kicking us off with a word of prayer before we get started?
Our most gracious and compassionate Heavenly Father, we just thankful that we can be here this morning. Honor you and honor you in this Bible study. So pray for Sister Pat, that her recovery will go well, and she will send you back with us. Pray for Matt told me to tell him to sit this morning. Pray for her father, that she will feel better soon. Pray for the Hicks family, also, Father, that you might wrap your loving arms around them. Father, just pray for our country, that we can become unified, faith with the world, we can find peace. Here, that the only way that can happen is by you. Father, as we go through this hour of study, please guide our thoughts and minds and help us to grow closer to you. We pray we will gain wisdom and knowledge from the study that Brother Dan's got prepared for us. Those who listen intently to him. Thank you for every blessing, your grace and mercy. May we glorify your name by the way we conduct ourselves in our everyday lives. In Jesus Christ's name,
Amen. All right, let's talk about Abraham. We're finally to Abraham. Kind of getting to the end of the Genesis, really 1 through 11 and 12 study of the early picture of man. And once we get started with Abraham, that's going to become the line that really runs the story all the way to the New Testament. If you look in 11:27, and I want to read 11:27 through chapter 12 and verse 7. 11:27 through chapter 12 and verse 7. A couple folks want to read. Who feels like reading this morning? Joel, if you'll do you want to do 27 through the end of the chapter? And then who wants chapter 12, 1 through 7? Kevin, if you want it, it's yours. All right.
This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran was the father of Lot. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. But Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. One day, Terah took his son Abram, his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and his grandson Lot, his son Haran's child, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan, but they stopped at Haran and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years and died while still in Haran.
Now the Lord had said to Abram, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and make your name great. You shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him.
And I want to just talk real briefly about, I'm just kind of introducing you to Abraham's family because that's what the genealogy is doing. Its purpose is kind of like we've had some genealogies to get us to Noah, and then now we've got a genealogy whose purpose is to kind of trace the line and now make Abram, who's going to be Abraham, the new main character. Interesting. I don't know why it jumped out to me this time. We're very familiar, like Hebrews chapter 11 and 12, and the story of Abraham and his faith and whatever. We know about Abraham leaving, looking for a country, you know what I mean, and willing to move and do various things like that. His father is the one that actually kind of gets the travel started. Did you kind of see that? Like they're heading that direction with his father. And so I did a little bit of reading and digging on that. Why is Terah, or Terah, I don't know how to say it, to be honest with you. I have no idea. Why is he leaving Ur of the Chaldees? Why is he headed to Canaan? And even before we answer that, if Moses is the one telling the story, writing this story, God's giving him this history, would Canaan be a buzzword? It's historical. We already know it ahead of time. But basically, once Moses passes and God buries him on the mountain, what's Joshua's main mission? So to Canaan's land, I'm on my way. I mean, and here they go. So here's kind of to me, like a buzzword or just like a hyperlink thing. You want to say, hey, let's pay attention to what's going on here. What happens in Ur of the Chaldees with one of Terah's children? What happens to Haran? He dies while they're there. Then they go to Haran, or however they say, and then they stay there, it says, about 5 years. There's no connection between his son's name and the town that they live in, I don't believe. We're told in Joshua 24 something about Abraham's father, though. You remember about what we're told about what he did? What his craft may have been? Joshua 24 and verse 2 says, long ago your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. And depending on your translation, it may be that he made them. He was a craftsman. Later on, Rachel, which would be Terah's great-great-granddaughter, she's the one that has the household idols that in the Hebrew is teraphim. And there may be a linking between, like it might have been the household idols that have been passed down all the way from that time. We're not sure about that, but Terah's name is the root word to the word that's used in Genesis 31 and verse 19. So he leaves possibly for a couple reasons. One, Josephus records that the reason why he leaves is he's mourning for his son. My son died there, and I'm trying to put that memory behind me. That would make sense. How does 12:1 read to you? Who's God talking to at this time? Right, he's told Abram at this time. It's going to be so hard, Abram and Abraham, but y'all will just have to know who I'm talking about, no matter which one I say. He's the one that God seems to be talking to, especially if Terah's an idol worshiper. There may be some kind of disconnection there. Acts 7 and verse 2 says, brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia before he lived in Haran, and told him to leave your country and your people, God said, and go to the land that I will show you. Acts 7 combined with this may be that Abraham has already gotten the message that, hey, it's time to start moving. But it's his father that starts the journey. or is leading. Doesn't that from the text kind of seem like Terah's the one encouraging the move? And it may be that, obviously his son Abraham has revealed, hey, this is what God's telling me to do. And so Terah is kind of the one starting some of this journey. Again, he may have his own reasons with losing a child there or whatever, or maybe his own financial reason, but it's just interesting to me. Now, I don't know how far we deep dive into what Terah worshiping other idols means. Does that mean anything to you? Does it communicate anything to you that God picks Abraham, even though like his background is not quote unquote squeaky clean? Does that do anything for you?
He could have picked anybody.
Okay.
He didn't have to pick Abraham, but he did.
Okay. Any inherent qualities though that might have made kind of like Noah? Noah stands out, would he not? Why did he pick Noah? And that's where it's did he already have those qualities and then nurtured by God? It's kind of like when Jesus sends out his disciples and he talks about if you find this household worthy, and if it's not worthy, you shake the dust off your feet, which says there is an element of worthiness before the gospel even gets there. And I've kind of compared that to the parable of the soils or the sower that spreads the seed. What determines whether the soil is going to be fertile or not? That's where our free will choice is kind of our disposition, our willingness to hear, our willingness to let ourselves be changed or moved or taught something. There is an element of worthiness before the gospel gets there. I kind of feel like Noah had some qualities that God saw and says, I can work with that. But Noah still had to choose. And I think God could look at Abraham and say, I can work with that. But again, Abraham has to choose, and he's going to pass his own. And just seeing some of that in there, and these guys, to me, stand out amongst their culture. Bill.
Maybe he chose a pair. Or maybe the fact that he's married to Sarah has something to do with it because she's barren.
Okay.
He's already had a problem with the lineage of the snake, as you put it.
That's right.
And, offspring coming up evil and things. Well, there's no doubt that when he chooses Abraham and Sarah, that lineage comes because God had intervened for Sarah to conceive.
I want to make sure everybody get that. That's very profound. If we're about to start a new nation, and one of the first promises he get in chapter 12 is, hey, your descendants, what are they going to be? Like the stars. And in you, all nations are going to be blessed. And this is good stuff. I'm going to pick a guy who's 75 years old, and guess what? Wife is barren. So for his glory, not necessarily the evil one that we were talking, but why pick Abraham? That's his faithfulness combined with the wife, and who's to say, providence of God, we're not told that God had a hand in that for his glory of that not happening until now. Who's to say?
Can I jump back to verse?
No, that was too good. I want to marinate on that one.
Jump back to verse 27.
Sure.
That is a topic sentence.
Yes.
They are throughout Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that sentence is to inform you of what you're going to read about later.
And we've got a couple of those. This is the account of this genealogy of Noah. This is the account of, or the record of this one. So excellent.
Just pay attention to those, because when you see them and you consider them that way, it can impact how you interpret the passage.
And what you're reading. And this is the account of Terah's family line.
God has all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So he chose Israel, got them out of Egypt, was ready to start over with Moses. You say, well, that's wasted time. No, God doesn't have time to waste.
That's right.
Because he's not living in our time.
That's right.
So, Jonah, go to Nineveh. Nope, I'm going the
Another way.
And God says, nope, you're going to Nineveh.
That's right.
So the way God works in Genesis is no different than any
That's
other
right.
time that he's worked. You bring up all the time about the one child,
Mm-hmm.
got down to one child.
That's it. Josiah.
And he used those people around that child to make sure his will was done.
That's right.
He chose Abram, told him to leave and go. I'll show you where you're
You're
going.
going to go.
He didn't even know where he was going. He just went.
Started. And like I said, why introduce that Terah's the one that starts the move? I don't know why that's grabbing a hold of me this time of looking at the backdrop, and maybe because we're coming right out of the flood. I guess if I was going to throw an application here, a motivation for us is it doesn't matter what your family tree says. You can start the faithful journey right where you are. You know what I mean? Your father may have been an idol builder, and then you become the father of the multitude. You know what I mean? You become Father Abraham, and it didn't matter what his father's, that's interesting. Noah standing out as a preacher of righteousness, a righteous, upright man, when we're told the whole world around him thought was on evil continually. That's possible. Did you have a hand raised?
Maybe to show he's not a disrespectful son in a society where the families tended to stay together.
That's right. I'm surmising, so I'm very, very cautious about that. But that Terah was willing to be influenced by his son to say, "Hey, God is telling me this," and Terah would be like, "God, who?" How well do they know him? You would think the story of the flood, with in the oral tradition, it's interesting to me that he's willing to start that move. Ms. Mallory?
I was going to say, it's just like today. If we're looking for God, we're going to find him.
Amen. That's right. And he'll find you. I say all the time, I believe God is looking for willing vessels. Do I think the Esther principle? Hey, God's going to deliver his people. His will is going to get done no matter what. So it's not on our shoulders in that regard. God's going to do what he wants to do. But who knows if you're here to serve in this way for such a time as this. And so God is looking for willing vessels that he can bless, because he knows they're not going to hoard those blessings. That they're, that's the kind of people he's looking to deal with. And we're the ones that get to make the free will choice of, am I going to allow God to work through me or not? That to me is what I see with the Abraham and with the Noah. G-Paul?
You brought up Jeremiah 24:2, talking about idolatry. And then in the 15th verse, it says,
choose this day. Yes.
It's a daily choice for them and all of us too.
That's it.
A lot of people have those on their door, as a door knocker.
As for me in my house, that's it. And I love that, like that. Choose you this day, and on the gods and whose lands you dwell. You know what I mean? Like, you've got a choice. So that everybody knew that culture and that choice was possible. And that's where Joshua says, you make your own choice. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And that's what Abraham is, to me, is the guy that's doing that similar thing. Excellent. Any other thoughts along this line? I said, I don't want to come out like that. We're shucking some good corn here. So I don't know why, but this is Terah's line. It's not even Abraham's line. It's Terah's line, but Abraham's the one that's going to shine a little bit. Let me see if I had any more notes on the Chaldeans or Terah here. All right, let me move. Let's talk about the blessings to Abram. Go out from your country, your people, and even your father's household. So it was always the plan that he was going to leave the family behind. Alicia?
That was my question when I read that. Then does it make any difference, the fact that he then took Lot with him?
Yeah, was he supposed to? Because you're kind of, I want to start something new? It's a good question. I don't have an answer to that. Right. I don't have a great answer to that. But what would be the possible motivation for both Terah and Abraham kind of toting Lot? Why is Lot kind of being looked after? Yeah, so he's kind of I don't know if orphan's the right term, but that's why they're looking after him, which is going to lead to opportunities for God's. So whether he was supposed to or not, God uses it for his glory. Because him being saved and some of the events that are going to come up with Lot, I hadn't thought about that. Honestly, I don't know if that means leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go where I'm sending you. That's interesting.
It could be a responsibility thing where he's now taking Lot.
That's it.
That's almost like his son.
That's it. I'm responsible for him.
And that's why they have the relationship that they have when they need to separate. But then he goes and tries to,
And even lets him pick where do you want to go, and
has a, he feels like he needs to save Lot. When
That's right.
Lot needs saved.
And Abraham, again, similar like we talked about with Noah, Abraham is a bad mammer jammer. Like Lot's going to get kind of abducted, and Abraham's going to go get some household servants and go take him back from kings in the area. Abraham is he's a dude. He's one of them. I'm going to make you a great nation. How does he process that? I'm going to make you a great kingdom. First mention of kingdom. Remember who that's associated with? The first kingdom is my favorite guy, or John Henry's favorite guy. Nimrod is the first one. It's kind of the kingdom for the wrong reason, and the Tower of Babel, we're coming out of that. And that's kind of what the genealogy picks up from that story of, okay, man tried to make their own kingdom for their own glory. No. Abraham, through you, I'll make you a great nation, but I'm calling the shots here. And it's going to be for my glory. And I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you. And verse 3, all the peoples of the earth will be blessed through you. Now, we talked a little bit. You weren't here Wednesday, because I know this is one of your hot things about the Elohim and the divine council. It seems to me with the Tower of Babel and the separating of the nations, that basically God says, this is the one I'm picking that I'm going to work through. Not because anything was inherently great about the Semites or Shemites, and that's where the Jews, but God basically picks them, and I'm not going to get into the mystical other influences, because we talked about the Prince of Persia and Prince of Greece. There are possible demonic influences over, but God says, I'm picking these, right? And so now, but what I see in the whole plan for the whole reason, this is where we went Wednesday night. Why did God pick one? And we talked about, remember talking about being the bloodline? That's why we got down to, I'm picking this to get my Messiah here in this way through this people, and that's what makes them special. But I want you to see in his promise to Abraham, the original guy, who all did God plan to include? Through you, all nations are going to be blessed, but I'm going to be the one that does something and carries it through. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing one, but my plan in choosing one is to make sure I can take care of everybody. That's kind of what I want you to see a little bit with this text.
And remember who's telling the story.
That's right.
And who's the audience.
That's right.
And where are they?
They're just coming out of.
So he's giving them an identification. He's telling them this was their land all, to a certain extent, already.
That's right.
And this is what remember, what did he tell them at Sinai? I wanted you to be a kingdom of priests.
That's right.
Well, this is how this is accomplished.
You cannot divorce. That's why I love that you gave us Exodus before we did this, because that gave us the timestamp, the setting, all of this history. Yes, and it's history and it's real and it happened long before, but it's not being told or written down or recorded until Moses is now about to start a new law, a new covenant. God is about to enter into a new way of relating to mankind. And in doing so, basically what I believe the purpose of Genesis is to tell them this is where you came from. And to show them this had been the plan all along. You're just coming out of captivity. You're not a forgotten people. I've been in control this whole time, and we're headed to Canaan's land. And you know what? You don't get it easy. You're going to get Canaan's fair and happy land, and you're going to get houses you didn't work for. But it didn't come easy. There's been people had to live real lives and make real life decisions to save nephews. They had to live, and Abram, Hebrews, doesn't even get to see the end result. He was looking for a heavenly city, and he took out not knowing where he was going, and he didn't get to receive or attain the blessing that the Hebrew people were getting told in the New. You know what I mean? Like, just, you're going to get, we are going to get Canaan's land, but you don't get it cheap and easy. There's a life you have to live, and there's choices you have to make, and there's a whole lot of faith and trust you got to put into God's plan when that path isn't just like a nice, smooth, when your path is doing all this and having that faith and trust in God that I'm getting Canaan, but I'm not getting there in a straight line. Madeline?
For some reason, I believe there's a verse in there somewhere or another that says that God picked them because they were the meat among the whole group that was there. They were small, they were not warriors, to show that He was the God of God, that He could do anything through anyone.
That point gets made in multiple different ways. I'm thinking of like when He saves Gideon and uses Gideon to be a deliverer and intentionally shrinks the army so He can say, so you don't think you... And I can think of a passage where He says to Bethlehem, a prophecy of the Messiah, He says, from you, Bethlehem, too little to be named among the nations, from you, a ruler is going to come forth whose goings forth are from eternity or from long ago. So there's little possible snippet. I don't know a specific one that says the Jews were small, but I know there's multiple places that it's kind of articulated. There was nothing special about y'all other than I chose you. And also He turns that on its head and says, now y'all are more responsible than others because to you was given the prophets, to you was given the law, to you was given my blessing. And I'm thinking like Romans 1 and 2, and like you had all these advantages and y'all are the ones that chose to ignore the God that was doing all this for you. So there's some along that line. Was there a hand?
You make a good point about trusting in God to see things through. And like for us, so we're going to make an application of that.
Mm-hmm.
To what end do you trust God?
That's right.
I think you got to look at Abraham being able in his mind to offer Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason he felt like he could do that is because he knew God could resurrect him.
And there's no mention prior to this
So that's for us to say, I'm going to trust God all the way to the end because He will resurrect me in the last day.
That's it.
And that, so you're talking about why did Abraham get to the point where he got to and be able to, through all the ups and downs, put his faith in God. He was able to reach the highest pinnacle of faith. In the fact that it doesn't matter what happens. God has, he'll be able to raise my son, my only son, from dying.
Do you know what Isaac's name means? It was tracking the same laugh or laughter. Anybody know why that's pertinent? Let's think about Abraham getting the promise he's given in chapter 12 that we're usually very familiar with. I'm going to bless you, whatever. Why is laughter pertinent to what we name Isaac? Sarah, why does Sarah laugh? She overhears God talking to her husband, or the angel talking to her husband, say, you're going to have a child. She goes, ah. And then I love that she kind of gets called out for laughing. No, I didn't laugh. Oh, yes, she did laugh. And then you get is anything too hard for the Lord? But just before the big crescendo of even offering Isaac, a passage that's used in Genesis by Paul in Galatians and Romans and other places, that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him for righteousness it was even before the offering of Isaac. It's even having a faith in God's plan that my descendants will be like the stars when here I am 75, 80 years old and I don't even have one. How about the faith to accept that? And maybe that's why resurrection was not a far-fetched idea for him. Because if you can resurrect a 70 or 80-year-old womb that's never had a kid, well, if you can do that, if you can bring that womb to life, why can't you bring that kid back? I don't know what exactly, because we're not told, but just to even believe in this promise it's outlandish at best. It's laughable. It is laughable to think God's going to do this with where we are. Let's see, what else do we got here? I wasn't really planning, that's why I was foreshadowing some of that because I don't plan on going super deep into that. I wanted you to see in verse 6 of chapter 12. First of all, again, Canaan is being mentioned throughout here. You see that pop up again in verse 5. Canaan's land, where the Canaanites are mentioned again in verse 6. But in verse 6, so Abram traveled through the land as far as the site, and the NIV says the great tree of Morah. I think yours said that the terebinth, I forgot, I don't know how to pronounce that word. But that's used multiple places there. To give you some parallels, a tree is where it all went wrong, right? At this tree, what does Abraham do? Builds an altar and we worship. One tree is where it all went wrong, and now starting at this tree, we're on the track of getting it back right? It's described as the great tree or the oak tree of Morah. The word Morah literally means instructor or teacher. It's where we get the word Torah from. It's almost like a foreshadowing of law or truth or instructor that we're going to get later. Totally left field, but related. And I literally came across an article that referenced this, and it was like one of them God wink moments. Some of you guys know that I traveled to Kenya multiple times. Like several of you guys helped me to get to go do that and bring back reports or whatever. The Kenyans, specifically the Kikuyu tribe, which is mostly who we're around, they have their own creation stories. Mount Kenya is where they believe mankind started from, and they like the Fertile Crescent and all that. I don't want to get into all that. But they have their own basically creation story where God, it's Ngai, they pronounce Guy, but it starts with that N sound. A tree grew at the base of Mount Kenya. And then they've got names for the first created man and the first created woman, and he creates them basically at this place. And it's an interesting, like, this is their creation story. One man, one woman at a tree. That's for free. And I came across an article that referenced that. I don't know, it just made it interesting for me that it's multiple cultures. Similar like we talked about with the flood, there are cultures everywhere that have their legends, their histories that mirror the truth of the scriptures that we have.
I'm just going to say in verse 7.
Yes, sir.
Just note that it says twice that God appeared to Moses.
To Abraham, yes. He's showing up and in what form. And I want to go into that, but I don't, because he's going to show up at the plains of Mamre as God basically is going to show up to talk to Abraham, and 3 dudes show up. And while him and his wife are in the back making the cakes and whatever, God has the conversation amongst himself. Shall we reveal to Abraham the plans we have for him? And how we're going to bless him and bless all, that's goosebumpy type stuff to me. I don't know exactly all the ins and outs of that, but it's these little winks of the supernatural that we have. Something else I wanted to point out from verse 8 before we're done this morning. From this tree, he goes towards the hills east, verse 8, of Bethel, and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west side of Ai, and that little town should come up later on. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and what do you have at the end of verse 8? Called on the name of the Lord. I don't know if y'all remember back in Genesis 4, we went into some detail about, it sounds so good that mankind is calling on the name of the Lord, and that phrase there, they were profanely calling on the name of the Lord. It was not a compliment. It comes right after Cain kills Abel and Lamech and all these things, whatever. It's not a good thing. It's just a wink of mankind was going this way that leads to the flood, that leads to the Tower of Babel. Now we've got a new tree, and now we've got calling on the name of the Lord, but in the right way. We're starting to track that. In Abraham, we're starting the heavenly track to the spiritual Canaan. what was lost in Genesis 3. And so, like, what I want you to see, my whole purpose of doing this study was to show you what history Moses was given. It's a downward spiral. It leads to the flood, and God has to wipe everybody out. And as soon as they get off there, we're starting all over. Noah sins. And then we kind of get some genealogies, and generations get cut in half. And then they get cut in half again. And then we end up at the Tower of Babel. And that's where we get all these nations, whatever. And so you see what man is capable of, the spiral and the deterioration. And now I kind of feel like in chapter 12, God is drawing his line in the sand and saying, all right, starting with Abraham, we're headed towards Messiah. Now, we don't get there immediately. It is a long and arduous history to get to the Gospels and the coming of Jesus in the flesh. But y'all, that is the story. That is the story that started in Genesis with the promise to the snake. It is the story that Paul tells us started before the foundation of the world. We were always driving towards Messiah Jesus, but what we're getting is now the real life people that had to live that and walk it. And I guess what I would just say right here is, as we're done, we know these Bible stories. And when I say story, I don't mean fake or fiction or not real. And I'm using the word story. But we have these legends, these stories in our mind, and we know these Bible characters, and we're taught them in our children's Bible classes, and we get them along and along. Don't lose, even though like it's compressed history, these people had to literally get up every morning, put on their boots, and walk the path that God had for them. It's awesome to see how his history works and God in control, and that is so faith building. And I need that. I need that power. I need that guarantee of the promises of God. But as I see this big picture of God's faith and glory, do not neglect the every single day having to get up and make the choice. I'm going to walk in faith the path that has been outlined. Bill?
I guess I never really thought about just what you just said about being such a long and arduous journey and how long it took for God to work the plan, although that was part of the plan. But it helps me understand the excitement and the exhilaration of the angels.
That's right. When he finally gets here.
The Messiah is born.
That's it.
They saw it too. They saw it play out.
And we talk about like their anxious anticipation for the coming of the Messiah. And I think God was looking forward to the time that he could do what he had meant all along. All right, we'll stop there. Leave that alone.
What was William promoted to?